Okay, so we're talking about cells and systems. So the first thing we have to figure out is whether something is living or non-living. So when trying to determine what is living and non-living, most scientists agree on these 6 characteristics that are common among all living organisms. So 1, there's some sort of organization. So living organisms are made up of cells. The cell is the basic unit of life and can perform all of the processes that allow life to happen. All organisms are made up of at least one cell, and every cell comes from another cell. So this is saying that single-cell organisms are considered living, whereas multicellular organisms are considered living. There has to be this organization. Energy. So living organisms need energy. Energy is the availability to make things move and change. Everything that an organism does needs energy, and energy is obtained from the environment. Plants and animals differ on how they obtain their energy. Plants use energy from the sun to make their own food, whereas animals get their food from the environment around them. Nutrients are substances that provide the energy and materials that organisms need to grow, develop, and reproduce. So all of the processes that occur inside an organism to sustain its life is called the organism's metabolism. Our metabolism is kind of this complex system that takes in all the systems that we're going to be talking about. Okay? Growth. Living organisms grow and develop. Organisms have the ability to replace some cells that are worn out or damaged. As an organism grows and develops, their body size and shape can change, and this is called development. Now, this is the case in multicellular organisms, but in single-cellular organisms, when a cell is worn out or damaged to such a severity, it actually dies, okay? But they're able to reproduce at such a quick rate that we normally don't notice this. Environment. Living organisms adapt and respond to their environment. An adaptation is a characteristic that allows an organism to survive in its environment. Organisms adapt to their environment for survival. So there are 2 types of adaptations. There are structural adaptations, in which organisms have a structural feature that is a part of them that enables them to adapt. So one of these such characteristics were the eyes on the top of the crocodile's heads that we talked about. That is a structural adaptation that allows them to help or allows them to hunt better. A behavioral adaptation is an action that an organism does to survive. So an example of this would be our birds of paradise's mating dance. Okay? And a stimulus is anything that causes a response from an organism. The organism's reaction to the stimulus is called a response. So, for instance, the birds of paradise, they don't sit there and do their mating dance all day. They only do it when they see a female bird of paradise, at which that's the stimulus, and their response is to do this dance. Reproduction. So living organisms reproduce. All living things come from other living things. So reproduction is not necessary for the organism to survive, because no matter what, it's going to eventually die. But it is necessary for the species as a whole to survive. Okay? And then wastes. All living organisms produce wastes. So all living things produce wastes in different states, so solid, liquid, and gas, and these wastes must be eliminated from the organism because they are toxic. Next, we're going to talk about some structures and functions.